It started like any other day, just me, my camera, and a simple goal: to document my experience in a public space. But things took a surprising turn when a female police officer approached me, her tone sharp and her demand clear: stop recording. I wasn't breaking any laws, and I knew my rights, but her insistence left me questioning what would happen next. Was she just doing her job, or was there more to this encounter than met the eye? As the tension grew, so did the crowd's curiosity. People nearby started watching, wondering how this situation would unfold. I stood my ground, calmly explaining my right to film in a public area, but her reaction caught me off guard. What was she trying to hide, and how far would this go? Stick around, because this story is about to take an unexpected twist you won't want to miss. As I stood there, camera in hand, the officer's gaze didn't waver. Her presence was commanding, and her voice carried a mix of authority and frustration. "You can't record here," she repeated, her words cutting through the growing hum of the onlookers. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was simply exercising my rights. The officer's insistence made me wonder if there was more to this situation. Was I in a restricted area? Had I unknowingly crossed a line? But the more I looked around, the more I realized this was an ordinary public space. Others were walking by, some with phones out, yet none seemed to be drawing the same attention. Her persistence raised questions I couldn't ignore. What was so different about my camera? And why was she so determined to stop me? Something about it didn't add up. The officer's tone grew sharper as she stepped closer, her presence becoming harder to ignore. "I need you to stop recording now," she said again, this time with a hint of impatience. I couldn't help but notice the curious glances from passers-by. Some paused, phones in hand, perhaps recording their own version of the unfolding scene. I calmly asked her why my recording was an issue, pointing out that others seemed to be filming without any problem. Her response was vague, something about safety concerns, but it didn't explain why I was singled out. The more I questioned, the more defensive she seemed to get. Meanwhile, a few bystanders started chiming in, some supportive, others just adding to the noise. The situation felt surreal. Was I being targeted for asserting my rights? Or was there something deeper going on that I hadn't yet uncovered? The tension kept building. The officer's demeanor shifted. Her voice was firm, but there was an edge to it now, almost as if she was trying to regain control of the situation. "I'm asking you one last time to stop recording," she said, her eyes narrowing. My heart raced, but I stood my ground, repeating calmly that I wasn't breaking any laws. The crowd had grown larger, and the atmosphere was electric with curiosity and tension. A few people were whispering, some openly filming the interaction. I could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on me, but my focus stayed on the officer. Why was she pushing this so hard? Was there something she didn't want to be seen? Then, another officer approached. This one seemed more composed, but his presence only added to the pressure. They exchanged a brief look, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. As the second officer stepped forward, his calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the tension in the air. He glanced at my camera, then at the growing crowd, and spoke in a measured tone. "What seems to be the issue here?" he asked, addressing his colleague. The first officer hesitated for a moment, her earlier confidence faltering. "He's refusing to stop recording," she said, her voice less certain now. The second officer turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Sir, do you mind explaining what you're doing here?" I explained again that I was filming in a public space, well within my rights. But before I could finish, the first officer cut in, claiming I was being disruptive. Her words felt exaggerated, almost desperate, and it only made me more suspicious. Then, out of nowhere, someone in the crowd spoke up. "Why does it matter if he's recording? What are you hiding?" The question hung in the air, shifting the focus entirely. For a split second, the officers exchanged a look, one that hinted at something more than a simple misunderstanding. The tension skyrocketed, and I knew this was far from over. The second officer seemed to sense the growing tension. "Let's take a step back," he said, his voice steady. "Sir, you're within your rights to film in public as long as you're not interfering with anyone's safety." His words were a relief, but they also left the first officer visibly uncomfortable. Before she could respond, a man from the crowd stepped forward, holding his phone up. "I've been recording this whole time," he said. "If he's in the wrong, so am I. Are you going to stop me too?" The crowd murmured in agreement, and suddenly, the officer's authority seemed to waver. Her face flushed as she looked at the second officer, but instead of backing her up, he simply nodded toward me. "You're free to go," he said. Just as I was about to leave, the first officer muttered something under her breath, something about "not again." It hit me. This wasn't about me at all. It was about something bigger, something she didn't want exposed. I left with my camera still rolling, but the real story was just beginning. As I walked away, the weight of the encounter began to sink in. What had just unfolded wasn't just about me or my camera. It was a glimpse into something deeper. The first officer's reaction, her nervousness, and that final comment all pointed to a pattern, one that might not have been caught if the cameras weren't rolling. I reviewed the footage later, listening carefully to every word and watching every expression. It was clear that transparency and accountability were at the heart of this story. The second officer's calm acknowledgement of my rights was a reminder that not all interactions have to escalate, but it also highlighted how easily things could have gone differently. This experience left me with one takeaway: standing up for your rights matters. Sometimes it's not just about your story, it's about shining a light on the bigger picture. And that's why I keep recording.